Welcome to episode 49 in our series on Duties of the Heart by Rabbi Bachya Ibn Pakuda, and we are still in chapter 5 of the Gate of Wholehearted Devotion of All Acts. We're still dealing with the tactics used by the Yetzer Hara or evil inclination in different modes of our daily operation. And the last episode they dealt with the Torah scholar and how they can be affected by the evil inclination. And in this episode, we're going to deal with when we pray, when we set aside time to pray, how the tactics employed by the Yetzer Hara to distract us from our prayers. So Rabbi Bahya continues. When it seems that you want to clear your mind and turn your attention to acts that will make you worthy of the next world, such as obligatory or optional prayer, or when you read the Torah or study any field relating to faith or morals, it will try to confuse and distract you with worldly matters, thoughts of business, buying and selling, profits and losses, etc. It will say to you, you should gladly welcome this free time, this idle period, since, because of your busy schedule, you may not have such an opportunity at another time. Now is the time to make an accounting with your partner of your assets and liabilities, how much you have collected of what is due to you and how much is outstanding. Think now about which means to a livelihood are suitable for you and which are not. Recall which of your ventures gave you satisfaction and which you regretted. If you have a case pending in court, review it in your mind, all of your opponent's pleas and your own. Think of different strategies to outwit and defeat him when the case is tried. So too, if you have liquid assets, sheep and cattle, or land to be sown, or if you must perform some service for government officials or a private citizen, or have some accounts to settle with either, or if you have debts that you cannot pay, or friends whose affairs you have to watch over, and of which you must give a conscientious account, the tempter will bring one of these kinds of concerns to your mind in the time that you are freeing yourself to serve God, in order to preoccupy you with them and ruin your religious practice. For when you perform it, you will be present in body but absent in heart and mind. And this is very, very true. I'm absolutely guilty of this. Even though I tell myself before I pray that, you have an hour in the morning that you daven shacharis, you have 30 minutes or 45 minutes mincha mariv in the evening. Can't you just concentrate on that? And I find that even if I say that to myself before davening, my mind wanders sometimes, and I bring myself back and I admonish myself internally, to concentrate and try and push worldly matters or your day-to-day business matters. Or it's funny how they can just creep into your mind, even though you can even say to yourself, it's funny how it kind of overtakes you when you kind of let it. And Rabbi Bahya continues, if the evil inclination does not distract you in the way previously mentioned, it will remind you of riddles and involve you in lengthy deliberations. If a person is one of those who throw dice or play chess and the like, the tempter will cause that individual's mind to picture such a game, and he will be thinking of the moves that should be made at an earlier or later stage of the game and the various strategies to be employed in order to win it. If a person escapes all of the previously mentioned and is one of those devoted to wisdom and understanding, the evil inclination will bring to his mind a difficult subject in learning and distract him with questions and answers, contradictions and resolutions, and it will call his attention to a point that he missed in his study, which he should have considered or reminded himself of what he still has to learn, so that he will begin to think of how to go about doing it. In this way, the evil inclination will distract him in all of the acts of worship and cause him twice as much damage as benefit. It is possible for a person to begin an act of worship and finish it while preoccupied throughout with some other worldly matter. He may ask God's forgiveness with his tongue, while in his mind and heart he is anxious to rebel against him. It was of this that one of the pious said, such a request for forgiveness necessitates a request for forgiveness. he may plead before God with members of his body, whilst turning away from him in his heart and consciousness. As it says in Yeshayahu 29 verse 13, with their mouths and with their lips they honour me, whilst their heart they keep far from me. And also from Psalms 78, they flattered him with their mouths, lied to him with their tongues, and their hearts were disloyal to him. At this point, a person may awaken and engage in self-scrutiny and say to himself, and Rabbi Bahya is going to give us a very good kind of mini self-analysis, which is very important. We should bear this, what he's going to quote, in mind generally, because it's extremely true. So Rabbi Bachya tells us we should say to ourselves, how dare I behave towards the Creator in a way that would be improper towards his creatures if I needed them or if they needed me? For if I approach someone for a favour, and while asking him with my tongue to do it, my attention was turned away from him, were he not to note the attitude in me, he would loathe and detest me, and would certainly refuse my request. How much more so if he knew that what had preoccupied me at the time was not something pleasing to him, but infuriating to him. In that case, his animosity toward me would be greater, and he would be even more justified in denying me the favour. I would undoubtedly act the same way if someone asked me for a favour and I knew that what was in his mind corresponded to what the Creator knows to have been in mine. How then can I not be ashamed before my Creator to expect him to be pleased with such an attitude on my part, an attitude I would not be pleased with in another person as weak as myself, and which a weak and needy fellow creature would not be pleased to find in me, as it says in Scripture, and quote to Yirmiyahu chapter 6:15, they are not at all ashamed and do not know what it is to blush. If a person does this and has this in mind, the evil inclination will then be defeated. And it's so true. We forget that we're standing before God, the King of the universe, when we're praying. And he's standing in front of us and he's listening to us. And he knows what goes on in our minds at all times. So if we're thinking about what we're going to eat for breakfast, or what we have to do later on in the day, and our mind is completely elsewhere, but we're begging him, or we're asking him for we're making supplications towards him. If we did this to a human being, they would be insulted. They said, at least look at me when you're talking to me, so to speak, but this we do the whole time, and I say I am guilty of it, and I have to consciously make an effort to really kind of singularize my thoughts towards God when I'm praying. And anyway, he continues. Another way, the evil inclination, if he doesn't get the better of you in this way, it will try to entice you by suggesting that you avoid all hypocrisy. It will say to you, you will be unable to achieve perfection in this wholehearted service of God unless you have rid yourself of all forms of currying favour, large and small. The only way to avoid currying favour with others is by concealing from them your religious activities and by showing them the opposite of what is in your heart. When you pray, be short and do not appear to go about it eagerly or energetically. When you wish to study any wisdom, seclude yourself. Let no one know of this, other than the Creator. Do not display any good traits. Appear to be lazy and lethargic in serving God, so that you not make a name for yourself and lose your reward. This is the Yetzer Hara talking. Do not urge others to do what is right or to warn them against what is wrong. Do not publicize your knowledge and do not teach it to others. Show no sign of reverence to God nor any evidence of serving Him, so that people not honor you for these vices. The ideal way to be scrupulous in avoiding hypocrisy is to consult with all classes of people, to act as they act, walk in their ways and follow in their paths in regard to sincerity and jest, and not to be so wary of lying and taking oaths. Join with them in eating and drinking, in riddle-making, excessive talking and joking, in tale-bearing and gossiping. In short, do everything to avoid a reputation for abstinence. If you listen to the evil inclination in this regard, it will deprive you of your faith without you realizing it. But you may answer it and say to it. And again, Rabbi Bahya comes back with this kind of a mode of thought that we should all employ in this situation when fighting off this evil inclination. So he says, you help my enemies by fighting me and scheming against me, to destroy my strength and hasten my ruin. Why should I flee from such a small fire into a larger one? The very reason I flee from the love of prestige and honour is to avoid self-adornment before others, and yet you would have me adorn myself before them by renouncing the service of God. It is proper for me to keep private the religious activity that can be carried out perfectly without people's knowledge, but as for participating in public worship, urging others to do what is right and warning them against what is wrong, teaching wisdom, practicing kindness and the like, there is no virtue in neglecting and forsaking these to avoid the charge of hypocrisy. Rather, I am obligated to perform them for the sake of heaven, and if people praise and honour me for doing so, this will not detract at all from my reward, since my intent in performing them was not to gain praise or honour. There is an old saying, when you do something and other people are aware of your performance, if you wish to determine whether your motive is pure, test yourself in two ways. Firstly, know what reward you expect for this act and from whom you expect it. If you expect it from God, the act is purely motivated, but if you expect it from anybody beside God, it is not purely motivated. Second, ask yourself, if you were alone, would you perform this act in the same way? If the answer is yes, your act is wholly devoted to God. Increase your performance of it. But if the answer is that you would do less, then desist from it until your heart is refined and your motive is for the sake of heaven. If you answer the Yetzer Hara like this, then he will be defeated. And I think we're going to pause it there for this episode, but this fascinating fifth chapter that we still haven't finished yet, that really gives a great grounding in the ways of the Yetzer Hara and how it affects you and how you can combat it. And trust me, beating the evil inclination in general, in all ways of life, puts you on the path to heaven. And Rabbi Bachya is giving exceptional wisdom in this section of Duties of the Heart, and will continue in the next episode.